Story 1. The Man Upstairs. First, we begin. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, let us know where and when you're watching this. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. I was 22 when it happened. The kind of night that rewires your brain forever. Even now, years later, I still hear it sometimes. Footsteps in the silence. Back then, I was renting the basement apartment beneath my parents' house. It was a smart move, I thought. Privacy, cheaper rent, and my own entrance. The setup was simple. Living room connected to a small kitchen, my bedroom, bathroom, laundry room, and a side door that opened straight outside. The place wasn't big, but it felt like mine. That weekend, my parents were out of town, which meant freedom. No tiptoeing around, no awkward glances if I had friends over. Just the night to myself. So I invited my buddies Anthony and Jay over for drinks and hockey. We turned the music too loud, laughed too much, and dragged the night on until bottles clinked empty on the counter. By the end, we weren't trashed, but we were buzzing pretty good. Since both of them had driven and had been drinking, I told them to crash on my couch. It was a huge sectional anyway, fit for 3 people lying flat if they had to. I meanwhile locked my bedroom door, a habit I've had since childhood, and collapsed into bed. That's when the night cracked open into something darker. At first, it was the sound of footsteps above me. Soft, deliberate creaks in the silence. My mind flicked through explanations. Anthony getting water, Jay stumbling around upstairs near the bigger fridge. Normal things. I squeezed my eyes shut and willed myself back to sleep. But then I heard it. The turn of my bedroom doorknob. Slow. Testing. A locked door resisting someone's hand. My chest tightened. It had to be Anthony, maybe Jay, confused or drunk. Still, I didn't speak. Didn't breathe. I just lay there in the dark, praying they'd give up, go away. And they did. The knob went still. The silence came rushing back. I eventually drifted off, convinced it was nothing. But I was wrong. The next morning, Anthony had already slipped out. Jay was still sprawled on the couch, groaning himself awake. Between bites of bagel, I casually asked him, "Hey, did you try my door last night?" He blinked at me, confused, then shook his head, said he didn't think so. He'd been too drunk to remember for sure. That was it. No answers, no closure. I let it go. Saturday blurred by with errands and hanging out with other friends. I came back late, tired, sober, ready to pass out. But that night, the house had other plans. TV flickering shadows across the bedroom wall. Screen fading to black. Silence settling heavy in the air. And then, creaks again. Above me. Not random this time. Not the groans of an old house settling. These were footsteps. One at a time. Slow. Purposeful. My stomach iced over. I sat upright. Listened. The creaks stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might knock me over. Then the doorknob. Twisting. Again. This time followed by a knock. Soft. Measured. As if whoever was outside knew I was awake. It's hard to explain the kind of fear that locks every muscle in your body. I grabbed my phone, thumb shaking, and started texting everyone I could. Family group chat. Anthony, Jay. Anyone. Just hoping one message would bounce back saying, "Yeah, it's me." But no one replied. My parents were out of reach and my friends, no way. There was no voice outside the door, no sound beyond the faint rattle of the locked knob. Just silence. I stayed crouched in the corner of my room, clutching whatever I could find. An old weighted flashlight, ready for the door to burst open. 10 minutes dragged into an eternity. Then, finally, I called 911, whispering so low into the phone that the operator kept asking me to repeat myself. I asked her to send officers directly to my window. I wasn't opening that door, not for anyone. When their flashlights finally glared through the glass, relief flooded my chest. I handed them the key from the safety of my window, and moments later, I heard the front door creak open. I waited, my whole body shaking. The officers moved briskly through the basement, my small space easy to clear. "Nothing. Let's check upstairs," one of them said. That knot in my stomach twisted harder. Up the stairs we went. My parents' living room, dining space, kitchen empty. Then my parents' bedroom. The officers pushed inside. And within seconds, chaos erupted. Shouts. Heavy boots thundering against carpet. I froze outside the door, every nerve screaming, "Don't look." But I did. I peeked in just long enough to see two officers yanking a man out from under my parents' bed. A man. My legs went to stone. Tall, filthy, hollow-eyed, covered in dirt. He looked both homeless and dangerous. And as he was dragged past me down the stairs, his eyes locked on mine. I'll never forget that stare. Empty yet venomous. Like he wanted me gone. Like he hated me for finding him. The officers cuffed him, asked if I knew him. Of course I didn't. Then they let him out, his shoes scraping against my floor, vanishing into the night. And only then did I realize he'd been in my house. Not just tonight. Maybe Friday too. Maybe longer. Had he been here when me and my friends blasted music and laughed too loud? Had he watched me sleep? Had he been waiting? I'd never know. The police cleared him as a homeless man, said nothing appeared stolen. My parents never pressed charges. But for me, the damage was permanent. That knot of terror in my ribs never untied. Because the truth is, doors only keep you safe if you lock all of them. I think back to that first night when Anthony and Jay were over, music shaking the walls, the front door likely forgotten, wide open, and a shadow walking in while we never even noticed. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. And keep your doors locked, because sometimes it's not the footsteps in your dreams you should fear. It's the ones right above your head. I moved to the cabin for the quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against the skin and sinks into the bones like cool lake water. 5 years ago, I traded city sirens for wind in the pines and a black lake behind the house that swallows sound whole. The nearest neighbor is miles away. Nights are long. The dark feels older out here. And most days that was perfect. Until the quiet started listening back. Evenings were ritual. Deck chair. Cold beer sweating into my palm. The sky dimming until the woods became silhouettes cut from darker paper. The lake behind me would tick and lap against the shore. A slow, patient heartbeat. Sometimes the air smelled like wet leaves and metal. The kind of smell that makes the tongue go dry. I liked that feeling. It meant nothing human was near. It meant I was alone. Or so I thought. Started small. A snap in the trees one night. One single twig under something that knew how to move carefully. Deer, I told myself. Raccoon. Fox. The woods are crowded where the eye can't reach. I leaned back and listened to the silence close over the noise like water. My chest loosened. The beer tasted normal again. I slept fine. That first night, anyway. Then came the scratching. Light, careful. Like a fingernail trying not to be heard. It slid along the siding near the spare bedroom window, then stopped when I stood. I held my breath. The fridge hummed through the wall. A floorboard clicked under my bare heel. I told myself to relax, to keep the rhythm steady, short breaths, short thoughts, short steps, because panic turns the smallest sound into a monster with teeth. I went inside and locked up, each deadbolt a small drumbeat against dread. The next night it returned. Closer. Right at the glass. Tap, pause, tap, tap. The timing felt intentional. That was the part that bothered me, the rhythm. Not random. Not wind. Measured. Patient. I parted the curtain with 2 fingers and let moonlight paint the world silver. The yard was empty. Just black trunks. A shine of birch. The low swell of the woods. Nothing at the window. Just the cold breath of night seeping through microscopic gaps in the frame. Still, I felt watched. Like a hand hovered an inch from my face without touching. I told myself it was isolation playing tricks. It does that. Days get thin. Nights get thick. Thoughts stretch. The mind slows scenes down until seconds feel like minutes. Until a single sound becomes a whole story by itself. I crawled into bed and let the house settle around me. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It had texture. It rasped. It pulsed in the baseboards. And somewhere inside the walls, something answered my breathing with its own. I didn't sleep. Not really. I just drifted and woke sore, like the night had chewed on me. By the fourth night, I was done pretending it was wind. I grabbed a crowbar from the shed, a stupid comfort, heavy and honest, and crept down the hall. The spare bedroom door was cold under my palm. When I opened it, the air inside felt untouched, stale, the kind of stillness rooms get when months pass without a voice. My light cut through dust hanging like pale threads. Bed, dresser, the ugly closet with the misaligned track that always squealed. Everything where it should be. I turned to leave. Stopped. The closet door wasn't flush. It had that small, annoying gap. I didn't remember leaving it like that. I set my ear against the wood. Nothing. No breathing. No shuffle. I slid it open anyway, bracing for the weight of something that wasn't there. Just shadow, cardboard boxes, a sagging winter coat. And in the back corner, caught on a rough edge of trim, hung a shred of dark fabric. Torn. Frayed. Not from anything I owned. The sight hit me in the chest like cold lake water. My tongue went metallic. The crowbar felt heavier. I backed out of the room, eased the door shut, and slid the simple bolt into place with fingers that didn't feel like mine. Outside on the deck, the night pressed close, soft as wool, smothering. The woods breathed. The lake ticked. I told myself a story I wanted to believe. Some critter squeezed into the crawl space. A sleeve from an old jacket got shredded, no big deal. But the story didn't fit. Animals don't tap. Animals don't pause like they're listening for an answer. Animals don't leave cloth torn from a sleeve inside a closet that never gets used. I slept on the couch that night with a baseball bat and the crowbar propped against the coffee table. The house was too quiet. Silence like a grin held too long. No scratches. No taps. No whispers moving under the paint. It would have calmed me if it hadn't felt like someone holding their breath inches from my ear. Morning broke thin and gray, and I told myself I'd been dramatic. That afternoon I drank coffee on the deck and watched the tree lean for movement that never came. Stillness can be a kind of taunt. Resolve is a fragile thing. By the next night, I decided not to run from my own bed. The lamp clicked off. Darkness climbed the walls. Crickets kept poor time outside. My heart slowed. The pillow cooled under my cheek. And just before sleep took me tap, tap, tap. I sat up too fast. The room swung. The tapping was at the spare room again, same tempo, same patience. Like a metronome set to dread. I grabbed the flashlight and ran, not even pretending to be careful. The hall was a tunnel. The door was a mouth. I yanked the curtain and slammed the light against the glass. First, only trees. The beam jumped between trunks and died in the branches. Then my eyes adjusted. A shape stood just outside the window line, where the sill's reflection broke the view. A human shadow cut from the night, featureless, perfectly still. Too still. Couldn't see a face. I couldn't see hands. Just presence. I felt it like pressure, like altitude sickness, like something old and patient standing where the woods thicken. I didn't move. Neither did it. The light stuttered in my hand, and that tiny tremor felt obscene, like laughing at a funeral. When my legs finally listened, they didn't choose fight. They chose phone. I dialed with fingers that wanted to drop the device. The dispatcher's voice sounded like it was coming through a straw. "Someone is outside my house," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. I gave the address. She told me to stay on the line. She told me to stay inside. She told me help was on the way. The words were good. The room didn't care. I turned to grab my jacket, to grab anything, and the floor behind me made a sound I've never heard a house make when it's empty. Not a creak, not a pop, a weight shift, a slow, deliberate transfer of balance on old wood. From heel to toe. Inside the hall. Inside. Not outside. Not the window. Inside. The body knows before the brain does. Mine leaned toward the back door without asking permission. The knob was cold and hard and perfectly loud in my hand. I opened it and ran. The woods swallowed me in 3 steps. Branches scraped my arms. Wet leaves slapped my shins. The earth tilted and pitched under roots I couldn't see. I didn't look back. I couldn't bear the idea of seeing something move the way a human moves in a place where only animals should. Sirens thread sound differently in the country. You don't hear them until they're close. The lights broke through the trees in flashes, blue-white veins pulsing against bark and fern. I stopped at the edge of the property, chest tearing itself apart, and hid behind a maple thick enough to hide my shame. The officers approached with guns up, voices clipped and professional, moving across my deck and through my door like they had rehearsed the choreography. I watched the house swallow them. I watched the house keep its secrets. I didn't step forward. Not then. They searched. Rooms bloomed light, then went dim as they moved on. The spare bedroom stayed bright the longest. The closet door stood wide this time, a black square on a white wall. No one waved me in. No one called out a discovery. Eventually the lights went off again, one by one, like someone pinching out candles with wet fingers. The night rushed back, louder than before. I let it cover me. I stayed behind the tree until my legs stopped shaking. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I didn't go home. I called the station the next day and told them I was fine, that I'd left the property. I was 15 when the house learned how to breathe without us. My parents left for the casino. Late night, quick drive, back before sunrise, and it was just me and Abby, our black lab, in a drafty place that made winter sounds even in spring. The TV glow washed the living room gray. Instant messenger pings kept time in the background. Felt normal. Safe. A night to stay up too late and pretend the world was small. Abby barked once, sharp, the way dogs do when something crosses a line only they can see. She faced the front windows, body pointed like an arrow, paws stiff on the carpet. I peeked through the glass. The driveway held one car. No headlights. No silhouettes moving between streetlight shadows. I told myself it was a neighbor's door, a truck passing on the main road. But Abby's growl moved up from her chest like thunder warming. She didn't buy the story I was selling. 5 minutes, maybe less. The house shifted around me. Baseboards ticking, vents sighing. And in those little breaths I kept hearing something that wasn't the house. A dry scuff on the porch. A hush where the porch light should have clicked alive. The kind of silence that feels edited. Then a knock. Soft. Not knuckles, more like a palm testing would. My heart tripped. I stood and put my ear to the door without looking through the peephole because I didn't want a face to be there if I blinked. Nothing. Just the faint sound of Abby breathing fast. The second knock didn't come from the front. It came from the side door, 3 short taps. Abby lunged. Nails skittering, body slamming the gap at the bottom, as if she could wedge herself into the wood. My mind tried to make easy shapes. Mom forgot her keys. Dad left his phone. But the driveway hadn't changed, and their calls always came before a knock. I stepped back. The air felt different, denser, like the hall had been filled with warm water while I wasn't looking. Then the sound came from under the house. Not above. Below. A metal click. Then the shivering rattle of a stubborn knob. The basement entrance lived under the deck. Hidden in shadow, tucked where only family and handymen ever went. You had to know it was there, or you had to be the kind of person who circles a house in the dark feeling for seams. Abby dropped her bark and went feral. A sound I'd never heard from her before tore out. Low, jagged, primal. Like she'd swallowed a chainsaw and decided to let it speak. I stood frozen. The knob below stopped rattling. Silence followed, the kind that leaves pressure in the ears. My brain tried to count Mississippis and forgot how numbers worked. When the next sound came, it wasn't from outside. It was claws on stairs. Abby launched herself down to the basement door inside, hackles up, snarling at the seam like the wood itself had offended her. The house held its breath with me. Then nothing. Not a step. Not a scrape. Not a whisper. The quiet scared me more than the noise had. That's when the survival part of my brain woke up. I called Abby back, slammed the interior basement door, and through the lock. The home phone felt like a relic, but it was what we had. I ran to my parents' room with Abby crowding my knees, heart rattling against bone like it wanted out. We kept a gun in the closet, boxy and heavy and adult. My hands weren't steady enough to be a hero, but I held it anyway, sat with the door cracked to listen, and aimed my ears down the hall like they were weapons. I was ready to dial 911. I was also 15. The front door opened. I didn't hear steps first. I smelled cold air and perfume and casino smoke that clung to my mother's coat sometimes. Abby bolted. I shouted and then heard my parents' voices. Confused, tired, flicking on lights. I staggered into the living room with the gun low and my face hot. The kind of embarrassment you get when fear tries to leave the body through your skin. I told them everything in a rush. The windows, the knocks, the basement door, Abby's growl that didn't sound like Abby. My dad's mouth went thin. He took the gun and started clearing rooms with it like TV taught him. My mom stayed with me and held on to Abby's collar like it was a rope keeping her on the cliff. We found nothing. No prints in the dirt under the deck. No scratch marks on the basement door. No smudge on the side door's paint where a hand might have tested it. Fear had the gall to look like a misunderstanding. I didn't sleep. Morning came like a bandage that doesn't stick. My dad made coffee strong enough to chew. He checked the doors again, the windows again, the deck again, the lock on the basement hatch again. He said it was probably a prank. He said maybe a drunk from the main road wandered into the yard and left when Abby sounded like a siren. He said a lot of things that tried to build a fence around the night. None of the posts went deep enough. The next afternoon, a knock came the old-fashioned way. Front door, daylight, polite. It punched my nerves anyway. I slid to the dining room doorway where I could see without being seen. My dad opened the door and his shoulders did something I'd only seen once before, when a coach shoved my brother in a way fathers don't forgive. On the porch stood my Uncle Pete, envelope in hand, smile like a sticker, glued on, not earned. Uncle Pete was family the way a splinter is part of your skin. Always there, never welcome. He had a way of talking that made adults glance at each other after he left the room. A way of standing too close at cookouts, of hugging too long, of asking questions no uncle needs answers to. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a headline. He was a feeling, a wrong temperature in a room. The envelope, white, fat, try hard nice, had my name on it. Inside was a card. Inside the card was a gift card. The note thanked me for helping his daughter, my cousin Kate, with her softball pitching. There were smiley faces, exclamation marks, a script that tried too hard to be casual. From the hallway, I heard my dad's voice go flat. When did you try to drop this off? Silence. Then my uncle's answer, trying to sound like a favor. Last night. Thought I'd swing by, nobody picked up. My dad shut the door hard enough to jar the frame. He turned, jaw tight, eyes glassy with fury he hadn't decided where to put. He told us. The footsteps, the knocks, the basement door under the deck. My uncle. Walking our house in the dark. Testing our doors like he owned the hinges. The cold that moved through my body then wasn't fear. It was something meaner. It made my hands shake the way anger shakes them. I wanted to scream all the questions at once. Why at night? Why no call? Why the basement? Why the side door? Why the quiet tapping? Why the pause between knocks like he was listening for me? But I knew the answers, all the real ones, would just be more questions dressed up to pass as excuses. My dad spoke through his teeth, the way people do when they're keeping the bigger words behind the smaller ones. He told my uncle to leave. He told him to stay gone. He told him exactly what would happen if he tried a door on our house again. The envelope felt hot in my fingers. I didn't want to touch anything that had touched him. That night, I lay awake and replayed every sound with a new face attached. The basement knob, the side door taps, the front steps small complaint, the path around the house in the dark, the path someone takes when he knows the property, when he's mapped the blind spots at family parties and decided they apply to houses too. There was a kind of intimacy to it that made my stomach turn. Monsters are honest. Uncles are complicated. Abby slept at my door with one ear cocked. Every time her ear flicked, my chest tightened. She'd warned me first. She'd understood before I did that the wrong thing about the night wasn't what it sounded like. It was who it belonged to. She would have gone through anyone to get to me. The idea that she'd met him on the stairs, teeth out, and he'd still kept moving around the house, that stayed under my skin. Whatever had looked through our windows had done it knowing a good dog was on the other side. And that I was too. People love neat endings. Police reports. Arrests. A lesson. We didn't get one. My dad made calls. Voices were lowered. Family leaned the wrong way on chairs at gatherings to make space where he was not. We stopped spending time with him. If he felt punished, he never said. If he felt ashamed, I never saw. What I did see, weeks later, months, were little things that changed the house. A new lock on the basement hatch. A motion light that washed the deck in bright honesty. A habit, suddenly, of turning on the porch light before dusk. Sometimes I think about the envelope again, the timing, the route he took, the way he circled for the quiet door, the hidden door, the one that says family on the outside even when it's supposed to say locked on the inside. He said he tried the front. He said nobody answered. He said he wanted to say thanks. He said enough words to fill the air so there'd be less room for truth. But truth crowds anyway. It stands at the window and tilts its head and waits to be seen. Here's what I learned in the space between my dog's growl and my father's hand on the gun. Danger doesn't always break in. Sometimes it knocks the polite way, and when no one answers, it tests the other doors to see which one opens without demanding an explanation. And if it still can't get in, it goes looking for the dark entrance. The one under the deck that families forget to talk about until someone else remembers it exists. If this voice finds anyone tonight who's home alone, keep a dog close, a light on, and a promise with yourself that you'll listen the first time. The house says something's wrong. And if gratitude ever shows up on a porch in the middle of the night, with a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, don't open the door. Not then. Not for that. Some thank yous are keys shaped like kindness. They still turn. We end. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tell us where and when you're listening tonight. If Abby's sleeping at the door, let her. She knows the shape of footsteps better than we do.